Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar has said that he wants a Gaza truce deal, and this comes just days after the US, Qatar and Egypt urged Israel and Hamas to return to the negotiating table.
Right, Shivan. Israel has said that it will send a negotiating team to Doha or Cairo for crucial ceasefire talks on August 15th. Hamas has also asked the mediators to implement a ceasefire plan for Gaza, which was earlier put forward by US President Joe Biden, and has hinted that it may stay out of the new round of talks.
In a statement, the militant group said that out of concern and responsibility towards our people, the movement demands the mediators to implement what they earlier presented on the 2nd of July 2024 and was based on Biden's vision and the UN Security Council resolution. The mediators should enforce this on Israel instead of going for further negotiation rounds or new proposals.
However, the three-stage plan for a ceasefire, which was proposed by US President Joe Biden earlier this year, includes a full and complete ceasefire, number 2, withdrawal of Israeli forces from Gaza, and lastly, the release of hostages. And all these claims have been rejected by Israel, which had raised objections, saying that it did not include one of the primary objectives outlined by Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, which is to destroy Hamas.
There are also growing concerns on whether Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu wants a ceasefire to remain shrouded in uncertainty, while the mediators have urged that a deal is the only path to bring all the hostages back home.
Netanyahu also faces growing pressure from his coalition partners, who have made it clear that they do not want Israel to strike a deal with Hamas.
Taking to social media, Israel's finance minister Bezalel Smotrich called the ceasefire deal a surrender deal and urged Netanyahu to not fall into the trap. It is a tightrope for Netanyahu to walk on, considering how his political future largely depends on his coalition partners, and several of whom have already threatened to leave the government and cause it to collapse if he agrees to a ceasefire deal.
And well, for more on this, we're now being joined by Colonel David B. Des Roches. He's joining us live from Washington, D.C. He's a professor at the Near East South Asia Center for Strategic Studies at the National Defense University, and he's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Welcome to World DNA. Sir, I want to first start by asking you that Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar, he has agreed for a ceasefire deal, but now there are questions being raised regarding Netanyahu's willingness to strike a deal given the fierce opposition that he faces from his coalition partners, and he's also facing pressure from the hostage families and also international pressure from the US and other countries. How do you assess all of this impacting the ceasefire deal? In your opinion, do you think it will yield any kind of a result now?
I don't think it will lead to a positive result, no. I mean, what you have is a situation where you have arbitrators like this, the United States, Qatar, Egypt. Both sides don't want to antagonize the arbitrators. Both sides want to say, oh, yes, we'll accept this deal. But then they argue over the details and the implementation. So Sinwar's conditions are that Hamas continues to survive as a military organization capable of projecting power in Israel if need be. And he wants to hold on to the hostages because he recognizes that if they're released, Israel will probably move in and destroy what remains of the organization. Israel's objectives are to get the release of the hostages and to destroy Hamas's ability to project power in Israel. It's not at all uncommon when a situation like that, where you have incompatible goals, that both sides will accuse the other side of bad faith and seek to get the mediators to impose their view on the other side.
Colonel, as you mentioned, you don't expect these talks to reap any kind of a result which is going to be conclusive. I just want to also understand from you, would you want to, or would you consider the possibility that Hamas is perhaps opting for Biden's plan, relying on the fact that Israel had rejected it earlier and it may just reject it again, and thereby this ways at least Hamas is perhaps on the right side of the US and the UN Security Council? That we agree to it,
well,
but Israel isn't. Yes, please go ahead.
Yeah, that's how you always try to present yourself, as the reasonable party. But if Netanyahu were to turn around and say, okay, we accept this plan, big part of it is that there's supposed to be an immediate release of hostages. Let's see that. I don't think Sinwar is in a position to comply with that. So, I mean, what you do is you accept the general principle, try to portray yourself as reasonable, and then you argue over the details. And the details is really where the two warring parties' positions are incompatible. But it's clear to me that Hamas is generally in the West, increasingly in the West, and definitely in the global South, winning the battle for public opinion. Israel's been on the back foot on that front for some time now.
Right. Colonel, there are also reports indicating that Iran could attack Israel before August 15. That's before the ceasefire talks takes place. Earlier, you'd said on the show itself that you don't expect any kind of an attack from Iran or its proxies. I want to further take that point forward, that how do you assess that impact of Iran attacking Israel now impacting or hampering the ceasefire talks?
Yeah, well, what I said is I don't expect an attack of an exceptional nature. There's constant ongoing attacks from Lebanese Hezbollah and other groups on Israel. So honestly, it's kind of divorced from the issue of Hamas. Iran's calculations are in Iran's interests, and they have a sort of general concern for Hamas. They're happy to see Hamas fighting Israel, and doing damage to Israel, but they're not going to risk their national security or their well-being on behalf of Hamas. Really, what is driving the Iranian calculus is the humiliation of having the head of Hamas assassinated in one of their most secure facilities, and the revelation that their security state is infiltrated by Israeli agents at the highest level. And I think that I was on a Hamas-friendly channel the other day, and they were saying that all of this is being driven by a desire to avoid Iran providing a pretext for the collapse of the talks on the 15th. I don't think that really comes into play at all. I think that Israel has probably communicated to the Iranians, you've seen what we can do, and if we have trouble, we're going to get you. And my data point there is the supreme leader himself. He was only at Hania's funeral for a short period of time because he was vulnerable there. And you could see the video of him. He was looking all around the room as if he was expecting something unpleasant to happen. So I think the two issues are disconnected in the Iranian calculus.
All right, Colonel, thank you so much for joining in. And your projections and assessments are always very insightful given your vast experience in the region. Always a pleasure getting your insights on matters. That was Colonel David B. DeRoche joining us from Washington.
Thank you.